Hi there. Today, I would like to show you how I solve quadratic equations using the completing the square method. This method has been working for me very fine, and I would like you to see how I do it. And at the end of this video, you will be able to also practice some of the questions I've written on the board. I have 8 questions in total here. I'm going to answer 4 of them, and you are also going to try the remaining 4. Now, I have written the answers of the remaining 4 that you are going to try, so that at the end of your work, you'll be able to check your answers whether they are correct or not. Now, I'm going to answer question 1 and 2 and question 5 and 6, while you will try question 3 and 4 and question 7 and 8. Now, these are the answers for question 3 and 4, question 7 and question 8. These are the answers. So at the end of this video, you also will be able to answer these questions and at the end get the same answer as I have gotten. Alright, based on my experience with quadratic equations and by method of completing the square, I have seen that there are 2 forms in which the question comes out. All quadratic equations are of 2 forms that you always come across. Now, for you to understand what they are, I have written a little thing on the board for you to see. Now, this is how a quadratic equation always look like. This is the general equation of a quadratic equation, the general form of a quadratic equation. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, where a, b, and c are constants. A, b, and c are constants, and a is not equal to 0. A is not equal to 0. The reason is because if the number before x squared becomes 0, that means the whole term here, this monomial, will become 0, and the equation would not be a quadratic equation anymore. Now, this is the general form of a quadratic equation. So, I have seen that all quadratic equations have 2 forms. There is one whereby the coefficient of that x squared is always 1. The coefficient of the x squared is 1, and sometimes the coefficient of that x squared is not equal to 1. Now, this is what I mean. When you look at this side, I said when a is equal to 1. If you take a look at this set of questions, you see that there is nothing else beside the g squared and the u squared. So this implies that the coefficient of g squared and the coefficient of u squared is 1. But for this side, you will see that the coefficient of x squared is 2, which is not 1, and the coefficient of x squared is 3, which is not what? Which is not 1. So these are the 2 forms they come. One is going to be the one that we have just 1, a positive 1, whereby you will not see it written. It is an invisible one. And you will also see some whereby you will see other numbers that are not 1. In fact, you can even have a negative x squared. It is still the same thing as not 1. So I have seen that all quadratic equations come in these forms. So I'm going to show you how to solve of these 2 forms, how to solve these 2 forms of quadratic equation using the completing the square method. I am sure you are ready to see it. Now follow me as I show you how to solve them. So I have the first question. Now let us see how I'm going to solve this question. Be taking notes of my steps, and you are going to see how I'm going to carry out the same step in answering question 2. Let's get to it. The question says g squared plus 5g plus 2 equals 0. So we want to solve this question by method of completing the square. Now, the first thing I always do is to take this number that is without any letter, the term without x, without the letter, without the algebra. I'll bring it here. We used to call that the constant. That's my first step. Then that means I'm going to have g squared plus 5g, which is equal to, and when this crosses this equal to sign, it becomes a negative 2. That is my first step. Now, the next step I'm going to take is I am going to complete the square for this side, which is the left hand side, And whatever I add to this, I will also add it to the right hand side so that I can balance the equation. You know, if we say these two sides are equal to each other, if I add something to this side and I fail to add it to this side, then that means this side will be heavier than this. So if you think of it as being on a balance, they are balanced like this. If I add something to this side, then this will come down because it is now heavier than this. And now, if I want the both of them to still be balanced, that means whatever I add to this left hand side that makes it come down, I have to add it to this side as well so that it can balance with it. Can you see that now? Now, let me show you how that is done. How do we complete the square for this side? I have shown you in another video, which you are going to see the description, the link in the description below. So let me show you how to do this now. I'm going to write g squared plus 5g. Then I will say plus, what am I adding to this to make it a complete square? What I'm going to do is that, you see the number beside this one, the coefficient of this g, I am going to write it with the sign. That is what I always do. I always write it with the sign. Then I'll put it over 2. And I'll close this bracket and raise it to the power of 2. That is how I used to complete my square when the coefficient of g squared is 1. Now you've seen what I have added to the left hand side. That means I'll come to this side, I'll write my negative 2 and add the same thing to it, plus 5 over 2 to the power of 2. There is a reason why I always love to write the sign I have here with it. This is so that I'm not going to get confused at any point. Now, once I have been able to do this, the next thing I'm going to think of is, when I divide 5 by 2, will I get a whole number? If my answer is not going to be a whole number, I won't stress myself on this. What I'm just simply going to do is, I'm going to factorize this immediately. And how do I factorize it? I will write g. And you see whatever I have in this parenthesis, I'm going to write it out. Plus 5 over 2. I'll close the bracket and raise it to the power of 2. What I have simply done is that I have completed this squared and I have factorized it. Now, the only thing I now want to do is to simplify my right hand side. And see how I do that. Minus 2 plus, since I don't want to do 5 divided by 2, I am going to square everything. And this will give me 25 over 4. Because the square of 5 is 25 and the square of 2 is 4. So let me simplify what I have here to get a particular answer for that. I will keep repeating this. This is g plus 5 over 2 to the power of 2, which is equal to, you can just put this over 1 and you add it as if they are normal fractions. How many 1 would you see in 4? You see 4 times and you multiply by this. This will give you a negative 8. Plus 4 in 4 is 1. And 1 times 25 will give you 25. Now, what is negative 8 plus 25? I'm going to write the answer under, because it is not too good to continue solving mathematics in a left to right direction. It's better you solve it in a drop down way. So you'll be seeing what you are writing from the previous step. So I have g plus 5 over 2 to the power of 2 is equal to minus 8 plus 25. And that is going to give you a positive 17 over 4. That is the answer to that. Now, once I've been able to get the answer of the right hand side, the next thing is I will now take the square root of both sides. Meanwhile, while finding the square root of this side, I would not forget to include plus or minus, because the root of this particular number could either be negative or the positive of it. Now, what does this imply for this? This cancels this. So I'll be left with g plus 5 over 2, which is equal to positive or negative square root of 17 over 4. Now, with this, I'm going to take g, make g the subject of the formula by bringing this to that side. And that will give me g is equal to, when this goes to that side, I'm going to have negative 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 17 over 2. Where is this 2 coming from? Because this means the square root of 17 over the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. So you can see that now. Now, I can then say from this level, g is equal to negative 5 over 2 plus square root of 17 over 2, or negative 5 over 2 minus square root of 17 over 2. Because here I've written plus or minus, so that means I'm going to write plus in one place and minus in another place. So this means g is equal to, you can see that these have the same denominator, so I'm going to write it as 2 under minus 5 plus the square root of 17, or another dividing line, 2 minus 5 minus the square root of 17. The instruction says I should leave my answer in surd form, and this is what it means to leave the answer in surd form. This is the final answer to that. So what have I done? I first took this constant to this side. After doing that, can you see that? Now I completed the square for this side, and whatever I add to this to make it a perfect square, I am adding it also to the right hand side. And what is that thing I can add to this to make it a perfect square? Just take whatever you have in the middle here, take the half of it and square the whole thing. Then this same thing will be added to this. Remember to keep the balance. Now I have done that. So I am going to simplify what I have on the right hand side. Simplify it, you get this. So, but for this side, the right hand side, the left hand side, you want to factorize it. And to factorize it, you can see that this has g squared and this is something squared as well. Just write the g and the plus 5 over 2. Write that in a bracket, close it and raise it to the power of 2, which is equal to what you have on this side. So your focus now is to simplify what you have on the right hand side. And I did that to the level of 17 over 4. After getting 17 over 4, it is high time I change this from the square to its square root. And that is why I found the square root of both sides, and not forgetting to put plus or minus to the right hand side. And this is what I have at the end of the day. So we just have to break this down to finalize our answer. That is how we solve the first one. Now let me solve the next question. Question 2 says u squared minus 14u minus 3 equals 0. So now let us see how to answer the same question. Following the first step I did in question 1, I am going to take this constant to this side. And this will become u squared minus 14u, which is equal to positive 3. Remember I said the sign will change as it crosses this bridge. Now once you've done that, the next thing is complete the square for this side and add the same thing to that side. I've shown you the reason why. Then to do that, we go on, we write u squared minus 14u. And what would you add to this to make it a perfect square? I said write your plus, open a bracket, the same thing you have here, which is the negative 14, write it again, negative 14 divided by 2 to the power of 2. That is what you are going to add to it to make it a perfect square. And I said, don't end it here. This same thing you've added to the left hand side, come and add it to the right hand side, which is equal to 3 plus negative 14 over 2 to the power of 2. Now, looking at what I have here, you see that it is possible for me to get an integer, a whole number inside this bracket. Now, I'm going to do this, u squared minus 14u plus negative 7 to the power of 2 is equal to 3 plus negative 7 to the power of 2. Because negative 14 divided by 2 is equal to negative 7. So you can see that. Now, once I've been able to do this, the reason why I could get this, I could write this now, is because it is a whole number. Unlike the first whereby I had a decimal and I left the fraction the way it is. Now, the next thing I want to do once I've gotten to this level is to factorize my left hand side and simplify the right hand side. Now that is going to become, I told you how to do this. I said you can see u squared and minus 7u. Write this u and write this negative 7 and put your square on top. You have factorized it, which is equal to 3 plus the square of this is 49. Because minus 7 times minus 7 gives you plus 49. So I need to simplify this. U squared, u minus 7 to the power of 2 is equal to 52. So after getting to this level, once I've been able to get the right hand side, I am going to take the square root of both sides and not forget to put plus or minus to the right hand side. This cancels this, and I have u minus 7 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 52. So there is a way I can simplify this sort, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to write u minus 7, which is equal to plus or minus square root of 4 times 13. Now 4 is the highest square that can divide 52, and that is why you see me do this. And what this means is that my u minus 7 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 13. I know what the square root of 4 is, and that is 2. So u minus 7 equals plus or minus 2 root 13. Now the last thing I'm going to do is to take this one to that side, and my u will be equal to 7 plus or minus 2 root 13. I told you what this implies. It means u is equal to 7 plus 2 root 13, or 7 minus 2 root 13. These are the two answers to the question. Can you see that it is the same step I had followed to answer this? And this is how you do it. I believe if you can follow the same steps I followed, you will be able to answer question 3 and question 4. So have fun as you try it and get the answers I've given to you in the first part. Can we move on to question 5 and question 6? Yes, we can. Let's do it. This is the fifth question. Let's take a look at it. These are the kind of questions whereby the coefficient of x squared is not 1. This is numbers other than 1, 2, or any other number. So how do we solve this? I want you to pay attention to how I solve it, and it is the same thing I'm going to do to the next one. So when we have problems like this is what I used to do. I will write 2x squared minus 8x, which is equal to negative 3. You will see that this is the same with what I did in the first part. I'll take the constants to the other side. Now, once I have done that, the next thing I'm going to do is I will divide everything by that coefficient. All of those numbers, I will divide them by the coefficient, which is 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here. 2 will cancel 2. I will be left with x squared minus 2 is here, 2 is here 4 times, which is equal to, now if you look at this, I'm going to get minus 1.5, and I don't want to work with decimal, so I will retain it as minus 3 over 2. Once I've gotten to this level, which is similar to the ones I've done in the first part, the next thing I'm going to do is to complete the square for the left hand side and add the same thing to the right hand side. That is what I'm going to do, the same step. And let's go on. That is going to become me writing x squared minus 4x, writing a plus. Now what I have in the middle is negative 4 over 2. Remember I said whatever I have in the middle, I will divide it by 2, then square it. This will be equal to what I have on the right hand side, minus 3 over 2. I am going to add the same thing I have here to there, and that will be negative 4 over 2 to the power of 2. Now, when you pay attention to this bracket, you see that negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So we have x squared minus 4x plus negative 2 to the power of 2, which is equal to minus 3 over 2 plus negative 2 to the power of 2. Now, I want to factorize this. To factorize this, I don't need to stress myself, just as I've told you at question 1 and question 2. I will just pick x, pick this minus 2 in the bracket and square it. Then for this side, I will then simplify. I have negative 3 over 2 plus 4. Where is the 4 coming from? This is minus 2 squared. And minus 2 times minus 2 will give you a positive 4. So I have this. Now, all I have to do now is to ensure I simplify this area. Once I've simplified this side, I will equate it to this and I'll go on. Put this over 1. Then I'm having x minus 2 to the power of 2 is equal to, what's my LCM? That is 2. How many 2 would you see in 2? That is 1. 1 times minus 3, that is minus 3. Plus 1 in 2 is 2, and 2 times 4 is 8. So what is minus 3 plus 8? I have x minus 2 squared is equal to 5 over 2. Now that I've gotten this answer, the next thing I'm going to do, just as question 1 and 2, is to find the square root of both sides and not forgetting to put plus or minus on this side. So shall we go on? Now this is what is going to be. Then now we have the square root of x minus 2 squared is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. Now this cancels this. Then I have x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. Now, because of the fact that I can't find the square root of 5, neither can I find the square root of 2 because they are a rational number. And I intend to leave my answers in surd form. The next thing I'm going to do is I will try to rationalize the denominator here. And this is going to be x minus 2, which is equal to plus or minus the root of 5 over the root of 2 multiplied by the root of 2 over the root of 2, which is the same, almost the same as you multiplying the same fraction by 1. But this time, I'll be having x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2. Now that my denominator is rational, I can take this to the other side. Then x will become 2 plus or minus the root of 10 over 2. And what this implies is that my answer is 2 plus the root of 10 over 2, or 2 minus the root of 10 over 2. If I decide to put everything over 2, that means I'm going to say this is over 1 and this is over 1. And that is going to become the LCM being 2. 1 in 2 is 2 and 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus the root of 10, or the LCM is 2. 1 in 2 is 2 and 2 times 2 is 4 minus the root of 10. These two answers are what the correct answers are. And this is the steps I follow to solve the kind of question whereby the coefficient of x squared is not 1. You can see it is almost the same as the first set of questions, only that I always take this to this side before dividing everything by the coefficient of that x squared. So let us take a look at the next part, question 6, and see how we answer that. So it's time for us to look at the last question as our example, and that is 3x squared plus 9x equals to 8. Now, on a good day, this would have been on this side, and the first step I would have taken is to take that 8 to that side. But they've done that for me already. So I'm not going to repeat the step because the 8 is already on the right hand side. So the next thing I will do is to continue from the step 2 of the previous one, which is to divide everything by the coefficient of the x squared, which is 3. You can see that the coefficient of the x squared is 3. So I cancel it. And this is going to give me x squared plus 3x, which is equal to 8 over 3. And the reason why I'm leaving it as 8 over 3 is because I will be having a decimal point and I don't want to work with decimal. So I'll leave it this way. Now, you will see that so far, what we are trying to ensure is that the coefficient of x squared is nothing apart from 1. And this is the reason why we take that step of dividing this 3 by dividing everything by the 3. And this is the reason why we take the step of dividing each of the terms by what? By 3. Now, at this junction, we want to complete the square for this side and add the same thing to that side. And that is going to become x squared plus 3x plus what I have in the middle here is positive 3. I said we'll divide it by 2, then square, which is equal to 8 over 3. I'm going to add plus 3 over 2, then the square of it. So when you look at this side, plus 3 divided by 2 will also give me 1.5. And since I have decided that I am not working with decimal, I'm going to leave it the way it is. Then what I should do next is just to factorize it. And to factorize what I have here, just like the ones we've been doing, I will write x and write what I have here, which is plus 3 over 2, and put the square on top. I have been able to factorize that. Then for this, I will simplify 8 over 3 plus 9 over 4. You can see that the square of 3 is 9 and the square of 2 is 4. So to simplify this, I'll keep writing this side, which is equal to the square of, which is equal to the LCM is 12. 3 in 12 is 4, and 4 times 8 is 32. Plus 4 in 12 is 3, and 3 times this is 27. So let me simplify what I have here. This is x plus 3 over 2 to the power of 2 is equal to what? To 59 over 12. So at this junction, now that I have the answer to this, the next thing is to find the square root of both sides. So I'll be saying the square root of x plus 3 over 2 squared should be equal to the plus or minus the square root of 59 over 12. Now this cancels this, and let me come down to this side. I'll be having x plus 3 over 2, which is equal to plus or minus the square root of 59 over the square root of 12. So to deal with this, what I'm going to do is to rationalize the denominator, because I don't have the square root of the denominator to be a rational number. And to do that, all we just have to do is just to keep multiplying it by the square root of 12 over the square root of 12. This is going to become x plus 3 over 2, which is equal to plus or minus this times this over this. 59 times 12, the square root of 12 times the square root of 12 will give us 12. Now, all we have to do now is to simplify what we have in the numerator and take this to that side. So I'll be having x is equal to negative 3 over 2 plus or minus. Now to simplify this, you know this is going to become 59 times 4 times 3 over 12. For the whole of this is the only square that I can find the square root, and that is going to be negative 3 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2. 2 root 3 times 59. 3 times 59 will give us 177, and this is over 12. 2 here is 1 and 2 here is 6. So I'm having minus 3 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 177 over 6. Now I need to simplify this totally. I will just have over 6. This in this will give us 3, and 3 times this will give us negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 177. And finally we can say x is equal to minus 9 plus the square root of 177 over 6, or minus 9 minus the square root of 177 over 6. Now this is the final answer to the question. You will see that to solve quadratic equations by the method of completing the square, all you have to do is just to carry out some limited number of steps. But when it comes to the simplification, it is not left to you to spend whatever time you want to spend on it. This means that we need to practice how to find the square root of numbers, we need to practice how to solve fractions, we need to practice how to solve decimals, and these are what we need to learn basically. So when it comes to completing the square method of solving quadratic equation, everything you've seen here is what I used to do. Once I have been able to identify that this question, the coefficient is having 1 in the front, I know I'm going to solve it like 1 and 2. And if the coefficient of x squared is not 1, if it is another number, I'll solve it like question 5 and question 6. So I want to urge you as well to try the remaining 4 questions which I gave in the beginning, which are question 3 and question 4, question 7 and question 8. And I believe you are going to get the same answer which I have gotten if you do them correctly. No doubt, mathematics is fun. The more you practice, the more you know it, and you end up seeing that you can be very good at mathematics. So you have seen the steps we have taken to solve these questions. So I urge you to continue solving and enjoy your day.